Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriel Onifade. Maybe good morning, whatever part of the world where you are at. You are welcome to this class. You are welcome to the Niger Data Hub. This is the week 5. And I'm happy to be your facilitator this afternoon, today, or morning, or whatever time you are looking at us now. So let's try as much to make this class engaging as much. I will try as much, but I believe our moderator is going to engage us better. So our topic for this session is developing batch processing solution with the Azure Data Factory or Databricks. Again, my name is Gabriel Onifade. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, a data engineer, a data scientist, and a systems engineer. Let's continue. Yes, what we are talking about is how do we design big data? Whatever the format of what we are trying to do, we are doing batch processing. That tells us we are picking our data from different sources, and that is big data. Audio, video, structured, unstructured data, social media data, election data, printed data, table data, whatever. So what we want to do, we want to take advantage of the provisions of the Microsoft technology, the Microsoft Azure, to take advantage of the capabilities of this technology to empower our business. No matter the scale of your business, enterprise or startup, the Microsoft Azure has provisions for you. And whatever the usage case, either seasonal or occasional or something unexpected, the Azure has capability to scale to accommodate your demand so that you can have a hang of your business. All you need to do, focus on your business, innovate, do what you love to do best, and let us take care of the technology for you. Bring your data, and technology will help you to have a better insight and to have a better hang of your business and your innovations. So how do we design this data for batch processing? We have batch processing chunk of data together, or you can have a real-time processing, one at a time, event-based. At this time, we are talking about batch processing, and I want to believe in the past classes, they have laid foundation for some of these. Although we still talk about some of them, and then some other things we are still going to learn, future classes too. We are also going to have a hook on those. So we are saying, how do you make your information accessible to Microsoft Azure resources? The first thing you need to do is to have your Azure subscription if you are taking advantage of the Microsoft offering in the cloud for cloud technology. We have your Azure subscription, but in this case of dealing with data, you start with your what? Your storage account. Of course, when we start, you know the first thing after your subscription, your resource group. But with data now, we are talking about your storage account. And your storage account, you can have a single one, you have them in multiple. They are used for managing your storage objects. And it can store any kind of data, either blob data, file data, table, or queue. 4 different types, basic one. Okay, again, blob, file, table, or queue. You can also replicate them in different data centers for geo redundancy. Now, what you need to know when you are creating your storage account, your name has to be what? Unique and in small letters. If you don't have your custom domain, Microsoft Azure has a default domain so that you can share it, with your other resources, even with other technology that you own or to partners outside the Microsoft technology. So it has to be unique in the URL. And you can use the 512-bit access key for sharing it for those that have Azure subscription, but those without Azure subscription, for others outside the Microsoft technology, you can use the shared access signature. Okay. Now, again, those type of the data type, again, I said they are what? Blob data, file data, table, or queue. Now, the blob, there are three types of blob. There's block blob, append blob, and page blob. Now, for the block blob, if your data has to do with video, audio, unstructured data, okay, tweets, images, yeah, better use the block blob. Append blob, you want to get log file, okay, that's the append blob. The block could be up to 100 MB, append block could be up to 4 MB, and can have up to 50,000 blocks. We also have the page blob for your virtual machines. And of course, the size is 1 terabyte, and it is optimized for read and write operations. So I said again, 4 types of data in your storage account: blob data, file data, table data, and what? Tell me now. Okay. Queues. Now, we mentioned the blob data. We said it could be block, append, or page. Now, file data. Now, your file data, they are shared folders that can be used for SMB protocols for accessing resources. The quota limit is 5 terabytes, and the storage structure is hierarchical. We have the table data, often use devices, device information, and other data for flexible data sets, having rows and different schema. You can freely append or insert information. Then the storage account resources is determined by your storage limit. The first one is what? Queue. Now, queue have messages to be managed asynchronously between supported independent applications. Again, we have said type of your data in the storage account: blob, files, table, queue. Another one is data lake. We'll talk about it now. But then, what is data store? Another thing we need to be aware of, because we are trying to do something on what? Data factory and what? And our what? Our Databricks. We want to process our data in batches. Data from the various sources we want to process in batches on data factory or what? Databricks. But then we need to understand, what are we really trying to do? Why are we doing what we want to do? What do we need to know so that we can effectively do what we need to do? That's why we are taking it this way. Okay, so data store, they're the abstraction for cloud data sources. Okay, it could be Azure Storage, Azure Data Lake, Azure SQL Database, Azure Databricks file system. Other ones could be built-in data stores. Okay, those are yours. The ones, the cloud version of your data stores. Okay, for your work space, the default is the blob store. Then you also have the workspace file store, the Azure ML global data sets. Those are the data stores. Why do we think data stores, they are better for us? What are the considerations? For performance type, and then for replication need, they're effective. Also, the package file format generally performs better than CSV. Okay, we are still going to look at that as well. And then you can manage the default data store using what? The SDK. I mentioned we are going to talk about the Azure Data Lake. The Azure Data Lake uses the Hadoop file system to create an environment that is ideal for advanced data analytics. real-time analytics, Internet of Things, devices, and web, and to manage files that are petabyte in size for best throughput. Okay, so since we are trying to do our file in batches, okay, we can really rely on this Azure Data Lake. And our file can come from different sources. We are going to look at how does it really work so that we can know, we can take advantage of all these tools from Microsoft. We are going to understand how best do we want to configure all this for our purpose. Now, but then we need to move our file to the cloud in a way or from other sources. Now, there are tools for copying those data. One is the Storage Explorer. Now, the Storage Explorer, you can get it even in the Azure portal. You can download it. You can download in the cloud yourself, install it in your system. You can use it to move data to the cloud and also from the cloud to your system. You want to do backup. Another tool is the AZ Copy. It's a command line tool that can be used. You can use wildcard, to copy data to and from Azure. We also have the Azure CLI. Now, if you said, "Oh, I'm not the Windows side. I'm okay with my Apple. I'm okay with I use Linux." Fine. The Azure CLI is good for you if you are not on Windows-based system. Another one is SSIS. Oh, we are used to the data warehouse, our SSIS. Yes, you can move your data to Azure with the SSIS to and fro. Then another interesting tool is the PowerShell. If you want to take advantage of the capabilities of the Windows application, the Windows PowerShell is there for you. Tools again for copying. Now, design for batch processing. What are the design considerations for our batch processing? Interesting tool is the interesting one is what the Windows Azure Storage Blob, the WASB. Now, the WASB works well with the Hadoop cluster because multiple clusters and applications can access the blob at the same time. This configuration, in addition, is provide SSL security. It provides more option for cluster availability and design for batch processing. What you want to do is what? Batch processing. So let's be looking at this. Okay. Then also, the cluster can directly access data without first loading it into Hadoop file system for HD insight. We'll talk a little more about HD insights. Now, blob storage is often the preferred medium for holding data because of the cost and design advantage, plus the easy access to the clusters. We are doing our batch processing, we are using clusters, Hadoop clusters. If you want to do real-time processing, that's what? AKS. Thank you. Good. So, and these Hadoop clusters, these clusters can connect. Their computing clusters or Hadoop clusters can connect to multiple shared data sources. Now, what are the design considerations for our HD Insight cluster? Let's note, HD Insight, of course, is what? Is the managed version of the what? Of the Apache Spark. The Apache Spark is an open source. Now, the Microsoft supports for the Apache Spark, the service is what? The managed service of the Apache Spark is what? Is the HD Insight. For our HD Insight, we have the Hadoop, we have the HBase, we have the Storm, the Spark. Again, the Hadoop, HBase, the Storm, and the Spark. Now, the Hadoop is used for extraction, transformation, and loading. That's for our ETL of large volume of unstructured data. You can have a low lot of spreadsheets, in the manufacturing or whatever industry. Now, the Hadoop is suitable for that. Then we have the HBase. Now, talking about not just SQL, that's your NoSQL. Not only SQL, database that is optimized for transactional processing. Example, your social media, your Twitter. Okay, so HBase is suitable for such. And again, we have what? Storm. The Storm uses stream processing engine and is often used for IoT workload and other micro batching processes. You have a logistic services, oil movement, and also, yes, the Storm is used for that. And of course, Baba, the great one, Spark. That's the most memory intensive of the 4 clusters. And then it's used for advanced analytics. Now, like Storm is using also stream processing, but it processes events in batches instead of what? One at a time. Storm, one at a time, real time, event based. Okay, but the Spark can do batch processing of streams. Okay. Now, our cluster, we have the map reduce, and copy at once and drop at once. It doesn't store a lot of data in memory for processing, but our Spark stores a lot of data in memory. So you can have a combo of that depending on your business or your use case. So when we're thinking about our cluster, our batch processing, which is the best consideration for us? That's why we are going through all this. Are we good? Thank you. Now, another thing we have mentioned about our data store, our storage account. We mentioned that in that storage account, we have what? Our type of data. What are the types? Your blob, your file, your table. Thank you. Okay. Types of blob. And then we spoke about what? Our data store. The cloud abstraction of your database. Okay. Now we have what? Data sets. So I want us to be very comfortable with all these things so that we can really understand what we want to do and why we are doing what we need to do. Okay, so data set will be version data depending on the usage of the same data for your purpose. Okay, of our data operation is usually based on data store content. Remember, data store, data set. Now, there are 2 types of data sets: tabular data set and what? File data set. Now, tabular data set is easy conversion, has easy conversion to Panda data frame. Now, another thing we talk about is what? Data frame. Storage account, data types, data store, data set, data frame. Okay, so tabular data set could be what? Tabular data set for what? Easy conversion of data frame to structure that can be formatted. Okay, with Panda. Panda, easy conversion to Panda data frame format for structured data files. Now, file data sets is another type of data set. Is a collection of file references for structured or unstructured data. Okay. Now, it's an example of how you can work with our data sets. An argument as a named input. Okay. Now, our data set again. Now, we can also get that from the Cosmo DB. The Cosmo DB also is for what? Unstructured data, and social media data. Okay. So in Azure, there are, configurations that can help us to take advantage of all this. Now, when we configure our data, we need to understand this data. We want it to interact with the visual tool. We want to use in the business at the end user. We want the end user to interact with the business. So all these things we must put in mind in our design, in our configuration, in what we need to do. Is it hierarchical? Is it interactive? Okay, that the things we need to do. And we need to determine that at the beginning. And that's why we need to understand all these things and their usage. Okay, so for example, in data lake, you may specify for it to be hierarchical at the beginning. you can do it later. Even in your Power BI, you can still use for hierarchical, for drilling down. You see your reports at a high level and you want to drill down to why, what if analysis. So your design, your data, your batch data design, of course, make sure your database is configured to make it what? Hierarchical for drilling down. Then we also need to consider the cluster configuration. Spark has persistent in-memory processing of a job, but MapReduce system writes the complete output back, okay, to the disk. Spark take it, the memory, process it, but MapReduce just copy straight, okay? So though both of them, they use Hadoop and YAM management, the Spark configuration will help for batch processing of data, okay? While MapReduce can be an advantage if data is read-only or for ETL operations. And Spark also is 100 times faster than MapReduce. So depending on your cost and your data usage, so you need to understand all that as well. Now, what are the data formats for our batch processing? Data can be joined from Hive, Packets, Avro, or JSON to create a single data set. Okay, data frame can be used to standardize the queries. Now, data set, data frame, by the time you bring the data set together, you can create a data frame and you can use any language at all. We specify the language, are using Python, are using SQL, all those opportunities, they are there. So Spark is capable of reading data from diverse data sources, as I mentioned, either Hive, JSON, whatever, structured or unstructured. And then the Spark SQL, okay, can be used to query what? Some of these Hive packets in the data lake, okay? Now, after you have done all the query, you get your results, you can connect to what? Visualization tool like the Power BI. We have other ones, of course. I must tell you that Tableau, Data Studio, 360. Click. We talk about it tools, and then it also give more joy to the business. So our Spark SQL can query any of this data formats. So our Power BI, just go to powerbi.com, download. It's a free version for you, for your purpose. Now, we now go to the real business, our batch processing. But what we need to do, some of us, we don't have a very powerful system to work with. So what we can do, we can just get a virtual machine from Azure. And when you get that, the first thing, and install PowerShell, all those tools for copying, easy copy, CLI, Power BI, your SQL Server Management Studio, connect to Azure, and then you can even have a virtual machine in Azure. And then now with batch processing, first load your data to Azure, prepare the loaded data for batch processing, then query the data. Job is done. Build your cluster, connect to visualization tools, can even design more things with that. So our job is very simple. Get a virtual machine. Take this step. What sources you are getting from, prepare the loaded data. So your data factory and then your Databricks can help you to prepare your data. What we can also do is to write some PowerShell scripts to also do all these things for us on a data factory or Databricks. So you can do that. That's why you have to configure your virtual machine for that purpose to run PowerShell script, PowerShell ISC is what we use. And then you build your cluster, you design. So let's have a look at those things very briefly. Go to portal.azure.com, log in. Then there are PowerShell machine, you can get preloaded one. See, this particular one is for batch processing. So manage files you can use. Get one. First thing, your subscription, get your resource group. Then give a name to your PowerShell machine. Make sure you remember your username and your login, please. Then create. When it's done, go to your resources. After that, go to connect, because you want to connect. Your system is not very powerful. You want something very reliable in the cloud. And then make sure that when you are not using it, you turn it off. Okay. Now, what's for you? So go to connect, click on RDP. When you click on RDP, you download the RDP file to your system, and then you connect. When you are connected, bam, your system is loaded for you to work with. Yeah, your Windows 10 system is there. Install all those tools there for connecting to your Databricks or to Data Factory, and then you can run some Python, some scripts, yes, Python scripts or PowerShell scripts to process for your batch processing the Databricks or Data Factory, our Data Factory. To get Data Factory, you get that. Just go to your resources on Azure, search for it, create Data Factory as usual. But here, make sure that you do your Git configuration, otherwise you may have some challenges. Then take the default. Then create a Data Factory. After that, the next, go to Open Azure Resource Data Studio to begin your work. It will open another link for you. Okay, right. So these are our data. So, and as we can, like I mentioned, you bring your data from different sources to the Data Factory for your what? For your batch processing. Now, the Data Factory, again, is integrated with Link Service, Data Lake, Azure Databricks. Now, when you bring your data together and you want to model your data or your ETL services, some of those things we call them activities. By the time you combine those activities together, you have what? A pipeline. By the time you have several pipelines, you have what? A workflow that can work on your data set, depending on your purpose or what you are trying to achieve. Okay? And you have a control flow. So you can also copy petabytes of data. There are tools on the Data Factory to get the hang of that. Okay? You have your link services to Cosmo DB. So all these tools are available there for you. I click and run configuration on Data Factory. Connect to your pipeline, connect to other data sources too for your data transformation. We also have the code-free transformation at scale with the Azure Data Factory. So those tools are there. All you need to do, have a hang of your data, understand your data, what is the use case you want, bring your data to the Data Factory. We are good. Connect your visualization tools. Business continues or your data store. Okay. Now, you can also add other sources together, the factory. Then there are options for schema modification also, a transformation in the words Data Factory. So all these things, tools are there. There are formatter transformation, just for you to have the best of your data and to run your business at scale. So there are also multiple input and output transformation that can also bring together in the Data Factory. Okay, there's row modifier transformation. So all these things are there for you. Sync transformation, all this Data Factory. Now, for what we need to know about data, we need to consider the data security. Yes, we can always use our Active Directory to ensure row level security so that people don't have access to what their job role does not permit them to do. Okay, so Active Directory is a separate service on its own, okay, but it integrates so well with the Azure for our data protection. We can also have network security level, can prevent some IP people from access to some IP, or some IP from accessing to some data. Even within the data, the table say you can even do table column protection or row protection for some data. Okay, so and you can even do some add some noise to some data so that people that are not meant to have access, they don't understand what data is meant for. So another one is an encryption. So these are the example of how you can protect your data. Apart from that, now data transformation and data processing. Now, our data transformation, we have the Hive, we have what? MapReduce, we have Pig and Scoop. Okay, now Hive. As in the SQL, the Hive QL provide the capability to structure your data into tables that are using ODBC that gives you the option for reusing code for complex tasks on unstructured data. Then Pig has sequential workflow-based process for restructuring or transforming data. Pig also has option what? For code reuse. And then the Scoop. Scoop is a tool that helps you to move your data between clusters and a relative database. With Scoop, you can move your data from data factory to your local system. Okay, Hive or MapReduce might be used for transforming the data, while Scoop will move it for you from SQL to Oracle or even to MySQL. Now, next we go to our Databricks. Databricks. What is Databricks? Are you a data scientist? Are you a data engineer or a business analyst? You can work with Databricks. Good. So it's like, and Databricks has what integration with other data sources as well. Data Lake, Azure SQL, Warehouse, Apache. Kafka, the Spark-based analytics platform simplifies the provisioning of collaboration of Apache Spark-based analytics solutions, dealing with batch and what streaming data. You want to do batch, or even if it's streaming, Databricks is there for you. Comprehensive Spark library support. Databricks has that support for data frame, machine library, hyperspace. Databricks also has enterprise level security, and Databricks is integrated with other cloud services as well. So Databricks data in Azure Databricks. Databricks access for multiple formats. Is this CSV, packet file, of course, and the best data formats we have is what we have packet file. So packet file, JSON, whatever can help you get in your data set, your data frame, with your language, whatever language you have. All that. Also, you have there's a notebook you can use. I will show you when we get to the practical part of this, to have access to work on our data bricks. You can have a workspace, you can have a cluster, like folder, you have your workspace, each person has a separate directory to work with, it's hierarchical, you can work in teams. You have your cluster too for group, okay? All purpose oriented, multiple runtime available for provision. You can also, on Databricks, you can also work with notebooks, type, and work with Scala, R, SQL. You have database file system utilities there for you. You can add or remove cells just to get the best of what you need to do. Now, how do we get our Databricks? Same way, go to your Azure portal, search for it, and that creates resources. Then Databricks. Very easy to create. Of course, we have created our resource group earlier. connect to it, select it, get a workspace, you create one. After that, launch your workspace. You launch your workspace, it's your Databricks workspace, as you can see. Now, next thing you create, okay, your cluster for working, because we want to work in a cluster. Create your cluster. And then you also have the compute instance too. You have your data, you have your workflow, many options for the best of your services. So create a cluster, as we have said, because we want to do batch processing. Then we have mentioned the Bell's data type is what? Our blob. So as a blob, select that in the data factory to work with our cluster. Then in the Databricks, you can have array data. So notebook with data, can work with data frame. That's some of the example of the way you can work. And then your SQL or your data frame, that's their own syntax on Databricks. To select for data frame using Python is a way to do that. So these are some of the commands that you will need on your Databricks. You can also write data in Azure Databricks. Okay. And then data frame, tabular data, distributed SQL API, your data frame, Spark distributed engine for structured data in various formats, whatever format, bring them together. Okay, structured data file, external database, IF table, data frame. You just have a single source of truth for those data so that any language, programming language you want to use, you can still have a hang of a data frame, a data set, you have a data frame, and then you can query, you have your results. Querying data frame, an example why you query data frame, using what the Spark SQL. Yes, working with data frame in Azure Databricks. Apache Spark data frame API, reading data in a single command. Effective way of getting access to your data. Then data transformation, select, drop, extend, drop, duplicate, show, display, limit. Then you can optimize the frame in Azure Databricks as well. Then after you have done all those transformations, you can still do things you do like you work on your data warehouse or ETL, get activities together, modules, then your activities combine to form your pipeline. Then create an inference with your pipeline, okay, that can be used. Then connect, you can now deploy, okay, or you can now deploy, you can use the endpoint, and then you can connect to your Power BI or other data sources or web services or API for consumption. So your application is an enterprise, you have an API that other people can now collaborate with. Then publishing after you've done all that, your inference, then you publish your data store, have your security depending on your use case. After that, you visualize your data. And we have mentioned our Power BI, the friend you can use for data visualization, plots, depending on the kind of. Then we have a friend, Toby Kazim. He did the research on, real time. You can find out more about connecting to Databricks, some of the tools. Yes, created a tracker. Now, connect your Databricks, kind of result you can have. I believe it's a good one for us. Yes, this is the kind of result Power BI pulling from Databricks or Data Factory. Our batch processing result, 21. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.